A word of caution about this episode. In it, we talk about domestic violence, sexual abuse, and physical violence. If you have ever been the victim of domestic abuse, financial abuse, sexual abuse, or any kind of physical violence, you may find this episode triggering. Listener discretion is advised. Hello, and welcome to Off the Fence, a podcast where we deconstruct difficult decision-making to help us figure out what keeps us stuck, and more importantly, how do we get unstuck? I'm your host, Karen Covey, a former divorce lawyer, mediator, and arbitrator turned coach, author, and entrepreneur. With me today, it is my pleasure to have Jennifer Ramirez. Jennifer is an author, entrepreneur, trauma life coach, Reiki practitioner, and speaker who's passionate about helping women live their best lives. She's the founder of the nonprofit organization And Rise, whose mission is to empower women to be the ultimate versions of themselves, no matter their adversities. Jennifer has years of experience working with survivors of domestic violence and provides trauma-informed care to those she works with. Jennifer is a passionate advocate for all women and offers prevention education to help empower and educate women on healthy relationships, red flags, and healthy coping skills. And who couldn't use all of that? So, Jennifer, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
It is my pleasure. I'm so excited for our conversation because I think it's going to be a really important one. And you're the founder and executive director of And Rise. I want to start by asking you, what is that organization? What's it all about? And what does it do?
Sure. So to give you a little bit of insight on the logo, so the ampersand, the and means your story isn't over yet. There's more to tell, and the rise means rising above any adversities that you face. So it's not just a pretty logo, it's something, it means something. So we work with a lot of women from all different walks of life, colors, backgrounds, socioeconomic economic status, race. And the common denominator between a lot of these women is that they're trauma survivors of some sort. The majority of the women we work with are sexual and domestic abuse survivors, but we also get women that have gone through religious abuse, cult abuse, sex trafficking, different types of trauma. So we offer free counseling, free support groups. We do a lot of educational workshops that teach, like you said, healthy coping skills, red flags. We do orders of protection workshops so that women understand their rights and can advocate for themselves in the court system so that they actually know what the rules are. And then we also do financial education, and we offer career development. So we help with resumes and mock interviewing skills. And we do just a lot of great things to help women kind of heal and thrive after trauma and abuse, and helping them be that best version of themselves, no matter what they've been through in the past.
That's amazing. And there's so much there that I want to dive in and ask you about. But the first question that comes to mind, you said you help women from all walks of life. What kind of woman is the kind of person who is likely to be abused?
Believe it or not, there's a common misconception that only women, that don't have money or poor people go through domestic violence, and that is absolutely not true. We've worked with lawyers, we've worked with doctors, nurses, all types of women from different, that have master's degrees and doctorate degrees that still go through this. So this is just proof that, abuse knows no color, shape, size, or anything like that. It happens everywhere. It's just a lot of people don't really talk about it. So we don't really know. So that's where that misconception comes from. So we work with all different types of women, it's like a big melting pot of like who we see coming in. So it's not just like white women or Hispanic or Black, we see everybody. And like I said, some people don't have high school diplomas, and some have doctorates and like master's degrees, and make a lot of money, and some don't, so it's very different. It's very mixed.
I think that's a really important message for women to hear, because when you're in that situation, when you are the victim of abuse, you, number one, feel very alone, and very ashamed, because you always assume everyone that I've ever talked to who works in this field or who has been a victim themselves says a similar thing, which is that, they were ashamed to let anyone know. They didn't think, it's like, how could I have let this happen to me. So, what
Mhm.
would you say to the women who are out there and are maybe too ashamed to step forward and go get help?
Yeah. So that is just the first thing I'll say. You are not alone. I know what it's like to feel like that, feel just embarrassed and like not wanting to tell anybody because it's like, wow, how dumb can I be? Is the things we say to ourselves. But I also like to tell women that we're not dumb, and abuse it doesn't happen right away. It happens over time. So, for example, the guy's not going to go and I'm talking about guys because I work with women, but abuser can be a woman or a man. um, he's not going to go punch you in the face and start calling you names the first date, right? Because if you did, you would never see him again, right? Most of us, at least. So it progresses. They start with like love bombing, and oh my gosh, I tell you the most amazing things, and they want to marry you, and you're the best woman and best thing ever, and then you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so lucky to have met this person, and then over time, the abuse slowly starts to happen, and it happens with like usually emotional abuse and verbal abuse first, and then it slowly goes into physical abuse and things like that. So a lot of women get into it like, well, what I should have known better, but it's like you didn't know because it didn't just start off like that. And it by the time these women kind of realize that they're in this situation now it's like been a long time in, now they're in love with this person, they might have kids, they're married, have houses together, things like that, so then it's even harder to go. So I will say that and it's never too late to make a different decision, and obviously if physical abuse is involved, you have to be really careful of how you get out. You can't just get up and be like, see you later, especially if there's physical abuse, because that can, put them in really like a high amount of danger. But yeah, I would just start with that, is just remembering that the abuse was subtle. They're kind of trick you into it. That's what happened to me too. It didn't just start out like that. My abuse in my last abusive relationship wasn't really abusive till the second year. That's when it got really bad. And then the like third year after was really, really bad. So it didn't, and there's some people that I know like where the abuse didn't happen for like 10 years in, so like it's not like it always just happens right away. And, so as long as you realize what's happening and then start making steps to get out of that and start working on yourself and that type of stuff, that's what matters. It's never too late, to get out.
Yeah, you mentioned, your own abuse and the things that you have lived through. Would you mind sharing your story for people?
Sure. So I went through childhood sexual abuse from my dad. Abuse started when I was 7 years old, and that's kind of what started all of my abuse, into other things. So grew up being told to keep it a secret, don't tell anyone. And then also when the family found out, nobody believed us. Everybody believed my father, who denied it, still to this day denies it. And then, when you grow up that way, sexual abuse is a very, very like deeply ingrained abuse that like can sometimes last a long time. And there's still things that I struggle with it. I've worked through a lot of my own stuff, but it's very deep, and there's a ton of guilt and shame, associated with that too. So then you grew up thinking your voice doesn't matter, you know, you're only good for your body, that's what you start to think. I know I can speak for myself at least. So you just think that like, well, all I'm good for is just like having sex with people. And then you start to like, get into that, and until you start to, I don't know, until you start to realize that like, wait, this isn't me, this isn't who I want to be, why am I doing this? That's what happened with me. I'm like, why am I choosing these type of guys? Why am I letting them treat me like this? Like, and then yeah, like it took me a really long time to get there though, where I was just like, I deserve better than this, I don't deserve to be like this, and that was with my last abuser. Like, it just finally clicked one day. We got into a really bad fight, and he had started the fight. It did turn physical, but then because I was the one, I call it reactive abuse. So basically I'm reacting to his abuse. So like I hit him, but instead of, him being like, I shouldn't have done that to you, he was like, oh my God, look what you did. Look what you did. Like he blamed it on me. So then I started to really think, and he was also very narcissistic. So I used to always believe all the lies that he would tell me. He used to gaslight me like crazy and be like, you see, it is you, it's you're crazy, look at you. And like every time I thought like, am I going crazy, is something wrong with me? Maybe he's right. I really started to believe like I probably am not really a great person, because this man's never happy no matter what I do. There's always a complaint, I can never do it right. So I really did start to believe all the lies that he was telling me about myself, until one day, just like I said, I had a light bulb moment, and I was like, no, he's the crazy one. He can't like keep a job. He doesn't help me. Like I'm over here doing everything and this is not right. Like, how did I get into this situation? Like I have a grown man child and I was like, I never signed up for this, you know? So anyway, so that's a very, very quick overview of my story. It's taken a whole long time to get here. And a lot of work and a lot of counseling and a lot of like just healing work. And that's why I teach women how to heal and work through just different things. You know, like I said, I've been through sexual and domestic abuse, so I know what it's like to feel like you're just always going to be sad, you're always going to be miserable, you're always going to be depressed. Like there's no hope. You know, you get into this place where you just feel like, how am I ever going to get over this? You know, and I know that it can feel like you're going to be stuck there forever, but if you just really make the choice to work on yourself and to work through your healing, no matter how hard it is, you can come on the other side of it, you know. And it's not something that happens overnight. It's something that's very intentional and takes a lot of effort, but it is worth it when you do that work, you know. And to say that you've overcome something so terrible is a really huge accomplishment. And a lot of women have done it. And that's why I'm here to share my story very openly to let them know that it can be done, even though it's tough, you know.
Yeah, I know that a lot of women who are in an abusive relationship, they try to get out and then they go back, and then they try to get out and then they go back. What would you just say to somebody like that? What can they do to finally get the confidence to break free?
So this is a tough one because, you know, a lot of the times they're going back because they're going through love bombing, right? There's a cycle of abuse. It's, you know, the abuse and then, you know, like the whatever the manipulation, and then it goes down to, I'm so sorry, I'll do whatever you want, I'll never do it again. And then they do it again. And then, you know, through the cycle, then you fight again, and then they promise they'll never, and so you do it. So I always tell women, I want you to really think about like what you deserve. And I also tell them, write yourself a letter and or write a list and say the things I will never tolerate again. Or another list can be things that I want out of a partner, things that I know I deserve. And once they write those things down, they're like, whoa, it's almost like a punch in the gut where they're like, whoa, like I want this for myself. So why am I allowing somebody else to treat me completely opposite of this?
Yeah.
And I tell them, I'm like, and if you know, you see yourself kind of going back into it, look at your list, keep it nearby you so that you can look to see the things that you wrote down. I didn't write them down for you. Those were all things you wrote from your heart that you know you deserve. And, you know, there's probably deeper work to do if you keep going back and just like falling into the trap of, you know, a lot of the times too, it is that these guys are promising the world, you know, I'll do this, I won't do that, I'll go to AA, I'll go to counseling, you know, and they might go once or twice, you know, but you have to just, I always tell people to remember to not just listen to the words, but listen to the act, watch the action. Because if anybody could say, I'm going to do whatever you want, but like at the end of the day, are they actually doing what they say they're going to do, you know, and not just tricking you? Because a lot of people say, sure, I'll go to counseling, and then they'll go one or two times and be like, but I went, I tried, and then try to like use that against you, you know, as well.
Yeah, you mentioned before the importance of, especially if there's physical violence involved, of having a plan that you can't just walk out the door and say, okay, bye, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that, or, you know, you tell me this is what I have heard and read in the work that I'm doing, is that one of the most volatile times, like the most dangerous times in a domestic violence case, is when you leave, right? So can you say more about that and about what someone can do to prepare to leave so that they keep themselves and their kids safe?
Yeah, so I would highly recommend if somebody finds themselves in a physical abuse and they're scared or they think that he's going to do something to them, I would highly recommend calling the domestic violence hotline so that you can get yourself an advocate that can help you with your personal safety plan because they know better than I do because I don't do safety planning with people. However, I do know about safety planning, so I'll go over that. But basically, safety planning is making sure you have everything you need for when you leave, obviously keeping it a secret from your abuser because if they know, they're not going to let you leave or something bad can happen, right? So like making sure you have all important documents like driver's license, social security card, passport, you know, any type of mortgage or rent, you know, documentation, kids, birth certificates, anything you need for the kids, and making sure you have that in order. That way, if you need to leave and you need to go apply for anything, you have all your paperwork with you. Also, They also recommend getting a separate bank account, like a secret bank account, and trying to save as much money as you possibly can. That way, if you do need to leave, you have money to sustain yourself and you're not just like, well, I left, but now I have no money in the bank, you know? So that's another important thing too. They say if you possibly can, to have like means of transportation. So like having an extra car. I know that's probably not likely for most people, right? But like also if you live in the city, like I do, you know, having like a bus card or like, you know, train so you can get around and things like that. Another thing too, off the top of my head, just keeping emergency numbers, writing them down instead of keeping them in your phone because you don't know what's going to happen with your phone. So any type of important numbers, whether that's emergency contacts or just your lawyer or whoever, you know, like because we don't really memorize phone numbers anymore these days. So that's another important thing to do. And like I said, just really like having a plan for when you leave, where you're going to go, where you're going to stay. You know, maybe you have to go through different people, you know, and just having that plan. Who can I stay with? Who's going to support me during this? And some of these women might have to go to a shelter. They might not have support systems where they can go to their mom and dad's or to their sister's house, so they might have to go. So like that's also why I say getting an advocate so that they can help you know where to go next and what to do next, you know. Another thing to keep in mind is if you're really, really scared for your life, you know, or livelihood or the lives of your children, because sometimes these abusers use the children against you to hurt you, getting an order of protection or like a restraining order against the abuser, you know, so that they can't follow you. And, you know, not saying that that can always stop them, but for the most part, it does because it scares people, you know. So just those are the top ones that I could think of off the top of my head. But yeah, I definitely advise to like talk to an advocate.
Yeah, I think that's a really important message for people to hear. And just so that everyone listening to this knows, I will link in the show notes the domestic violence hotline, which is national, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so people can, you know, you can call that, there's so much help available, but you have to look for it and you have to know what you're looking for, right?
Yes.
And so let's say, you know, somebody does get it together. Talk more about that, the bank account, the way to support yourself. What are ideas? Like, what can women do? Because I know that even people who are making money, it's about the control of the money. And I
Mm-hmm.
have heard a lot of instances of financial abuse where even
Mm-hmm.
if the woman is making the money, it's deposited into an account that her husband or spouse, husband or relationship partner or whatever the situation is, they
Right.
control that money. She can't get access to it. So what do you have any ideas for people like that who are able to earn but don't have access to what they earn?
Yeah, that's a really tough one to answer just because all those, you know, every situation is very unique and different. So obviously if they're like the breadwinner, here, let me think this through. If they're the breadwinner, they could again start a separate bank account, you know, maybe even if it's starting with 50 or $100, you know, and just like taking it out in cash and then depositing it in your secret account if possible. I would say doing it in small amounts. That way they're not, you know, if you're taking out $1,500, you are going to get questioned, where's that money going, right? But like if it's smaller amounts, you could just say, oh, I need a cash to go get my nails done or something. And, you know, like you can
Yeah.
use something like that. That's why I say smaller amounts and just trying to like keep that secret as much as you can. But I think people too, once they leave, it's easier to be able to take over their finances because they're not being controlled anymore. But like
Right.
definitely in the situation, because I've been through like financial abuse too, where you know, not exactly where they're like making me put all my money in an account and they're taking it, but kind of similar to that. And it's a really tough situation to be in because then you start to feel like, you know, am I ever going to get out of this? Like, what am I going to do? Like, if this person's taking my money or threatening me if I don't give them the money, that they will do something to me. So it can put people in a really tough situation. So that's another case where I would also say talk to an advocate because financial abuse is a really, really detrimental one. Because obviously we need money to live, and if you don't have it, then you know you're just put in a really bad situation. And also, I would say with this and the other thing we just talked about too is documenting everything. So good thing about banking systems is that there's a paper trail with everything that you do, whether you transfer money, take it out. So if you have a case like against this person and say, hey, they did all this stuff, you can at least, if it's going through a bank account, you have that like paper trail of the things that are going on. But also, if this part isn't really pertaining to financial abuse, but I always tell people document, document, document. Document everything you possibly can. I know that videos and stuff like that don't always hold up in court, but why not? If you have proof, why not? If you can get an audio recording, a video recording, if not, that's okay. If you don't, get a notebook or keep it in your phone, like date and time of the incident, what happened, who was there, what was exactly said, and keeping track of all of that. Because when people start to go through the divorce process or they start to get an order of protection or whatever, they're, going to court or just dealing with their abuser through like the justice system, they first thing they ask, do you have proof? Did you go to a domestic violence shelter? Did you call for help? And if you don't, they use that against survivors, that you
Yeah.
didn't call for help. But a lot of the times we don't call for help because a lot of us know that we don't want the help maybe from the cops. We don't have the best, like track record with them. We don't trust them. So a lot of people don't go for help, but that is actually used against you in court. Well, if it was really that bad, you should have called for help. You didn't never called 911. Why not? And then they start to throw that against you. So that's why I say, okay, I didn't call because I was scared, but I did document everything that happened from, 2000, I don't know, 1 till 2023. I have every instance. So I always tell people just document, document, document as much as you can. That way they can never say, well, there's not enough proof here. Like, well, I have everything that's ever happened, and I think that's super, super important. And I see so many women that don't do that and then they end up losing, in court. And it's really sad to see because it's not like they're lying. They just didn't have that proof that is required.
Right. I mean, I was just speaking with another podcast guest a couple of weeks ago who said, what she learned in going through her divorce, and it wasn't even an abusive situation, but just one where things were her now ex was taking advantage of her and the kids and not wanting to pay for anything and blah, blah, blah. And she, her way of putting it was that it doesn't matter what happened, it matters what you can prove. And that's really true. And especially in today's day and age, I always coach and counsel my clients to get their proof and get it out of the house. Get the proof. It's easier today with the cloud, with everything in the cloud. Get things, make pictures, make copies, get everything out of the house, because if you've got to just pick up your purse and run, you'll still have access to it, versus if it's in the basement or in the bedroom, it's just gone, you can't,
Yeah. And you
so
mentioned another thing that just reminded me about safety planning is having an extra bag with underwear, bras, extra clothes for the kids. You just reminded me of that. That's another thing to have, kind of make it look like it's just a bag or whatever, but it really, keep it in your trunk or keep it at your, a close friend's house or somebody. That way, if you need to leave, you have stuff and you don't have to worry about, oh, now I don't have like, a toothbrush or something like that. That's another thing to, have a bag with like medicines and just those basic essentials that you would need.
100%. And, I want to go back to going back to your story. You mentioned something that is also very, very common for people who are in abusive relationships, is that you get out and then you do it again. And then you get out and then you do it again. What can someone do who has been in an abusive relationship so that they don't just repeat the behavior and make the same mistake again?
Yeah. I highly recommend seeing a mental health counselor or therapist that will help you so much to work through why you keep choosing the same people, because there is a cycle there, and we don't even realize it. We don't realize like, oh, I'm dating the same guy, but this one has blue eyes and brown hair, and the last one had brown eyes and, white hair, whatever, so they think like, oh, it's a different person, or this one has a different job, so he's a little bit better than the last one. But then the internal stuff ends up being the exact same because we all have a type, right? And I always tell girlfriends this who are single, I'm like, okay, we all have a type, but just because we have a type doesn't mean that that type serves us or does anything good for us. There's a reason we're attracted to a certain look or a certain type of personality, but just because we like that doesn't mean that it's always good for us, right? I know a lot of people get so like into looks and stuff like that. It doesn't matter because that can be taken away tomorrow, and if he has a bad personality, that's what really matters. So anyway, I would highly recommend going to a mental health professional so that you can start working through that. And also self-awareness is a really, really big piece of the healing journey. So understanding why you have the friends you have, why you choose the men you choose or women, whatever. Why you allow people to treat you a certain way. Maybe you have little to no boundaries. Maybe you're a people pleaser, and really uncovering why am I like this? And do I like it? If you like it, fine, go ahead. Enjoy it. But if you don't, then okay, then there's something I might need to change here. That's what happened with me. I became so angry. I became this really angry person where I was just mad at the world, everybody. And like I started becoming a person that I didn't even recognize anymore. And I was just like, I don't like her. Like, it's not like the best version of myself. She's like mean and like just like ready to go, ready to fight with like anybody because I went into like protection mode because I was so sick of everybody taking advantage of me and abusing me that I was like, I'm gonna like get them before they get me. And that was also really self-destructive because I'm a really good-hearted person. I don't like to hurt people intentionally, but I started becoming this person where I was like, I'm gonna hurt you first before you get me, and then that's the way I keep myself safe. But that wasn't serving me. It worked for a little while to keep me safe, but then as I started healing, I'm like, this is no longer me. I need to think of, do something better. So then I really just became super self-aware where I was like, okay, if I was dating somebody new, I'm like, is this the same type of guy I dated before? If yes, then I should probably say goodbye and try something new. Even like friendships and like just different decisions I was making, I literally would take a step back and I'd be like, did I do this before? How did it work? Okay, it didn't work out for me, so maybe I should try something new. And that's how I ended up here, just really understanding like, is this serving you? Does that person serve you anymore? And people do come in our life for a reason and for a season. There's usually a reason that they're there to teach us some type of lesson, even if it's a hard one. It's like sometimes it's those hardest lessons that really make the biggest impact. So yeah, so that's what I would say. I would say just really try hard to understand like why you make the decisions you make, and if you think they're not serving you, then try to delve into that deeper and change it, because we're the authors of our own story and you can make it however you want it to be. You just have to be willing to do the work to do that.
Yeah, 100%. And I love how you framed this because ultimately everybody always wants to control what's outside of them, but the only thing you get to control is what's inside of you. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where it all starts. That's where the change happens. That's also the thing that we don't want to do, but
Mm-hmm.
it's that work that can fundamentally make a huge difference. So let's say somebody is doing the work, but they're not sure of themselves. They haven't been, in a healthy relationship for a long time. So they meet somebody, they think they're breaking the pattern, but they're not sure. What are the red flags that they can look for to say, no, this is not going to be healthy?
Yeah, for sure. And I love talking about red flags just because I think they're so easily we can easily look them over, especially if we're attracted to someone. He's so cute, he's so funny. So, oh, that was a red flag, but it's fine. Like we tend to do that, and we tend to like just be a little bit forgiving, especially when we're just meeting somebody. So, a big red flag when you first meet somebody is if they're trying to move too fast. Are they trying to make you their girlfriend right away? They're trying to move in with you right away, trying to marry you right away, telling you they love you is a huge red flag right away. If they tell you they love you like right away, that is such a big red flag. And I do think that there's some instances where people generally like literally do fall in love right away, right? But like that is a red flag for me. And I've had a lot of guys in my past tell me they love me like the first week or second week of knowing them. And I'm like, what? You don't even know me though. I don't think it's love. I think sometimes it's infatuation that people mistake for love. And so that's one of them. The moving too fast thing is another thing. And also being really careful about like, or not careful, but like listening to how they speak about other people, especially exes, ex-wife or an ex-girlfriend. And don't get me wrong, situations can go wrong. It could be the other person, but if they're calling her out of her name and just speaking really poorly about her, that's a really big red flag because that's if they're doing that to her, then don't think that they won't talk about you like that one day. And you really don't know. There's two sides to every story. And I've met like a lot of my girlfriends are dating right now. So like they tell me the things that the guys say about their ex-wives or the ex-girlfriends. And I'm like, that sounds really weird. Like he gave you a lot of information for just saying, hey, what happened in your last relationship? But he's just like bad mouthing her or saying that she's a bad mother and she's a this and she's a that. Like I think that's a big red flag too. Also how they speak about just other people. Also, if you're out with him and he's talking down to a waiter or to a busboy or to the, that's very telling to me too. Like the way that they treat service people, because there's some people that treat them like, oh, they're just a busboy. Who cares? And I'm like, they're still a human being. They should be
Yeah.
treated with respect because that will be telling of like how they're also going to treat you or your friends and people they also don't know. What else can I say is a red flag? Can't think of anything else off the top of my head right now.
Those are
Um,
some pretty big ones, those
yeah, they are. Oh, another one too, lying right away too. Like if you find out they're lying, I know for me, I missed one with my kid's dad. He lied to me about his age. And age seems like, oh, it's not a big deal, right? And at the time we were only 19, but back then I didn't date guys that were younger than me. So I would have never even given him a chance and he knew that. And I didn't find out till I saw his ID like a couple months after we started dating. I found out he was like 18 and I was like, I thought you said you were 19. And he's like, oh, but I knew you weren't going to date me if I told you the truth. And that should have been the biggest deal breaker for me. But I was like, okay, I was 19. So I was like, okay, whatever. But now that I look back, I'm like, you should have taken that and ran with it. But I didn't know about red flags back then. Didn't even know there was such a thing as abusive. I mean, I knew there was physical abuse. I didn't know about financial and emotional abuse and things like that, which he did put me through. So yeah, I would say that one too. Just any little type of lie, even if it's a white lie, is still a lie. And that's a really big one to pay attention to for sure.
Yeah. And you bring up a really good point that abuse comes in many shades and shapes and colors and kinds, right? It's not just physical violence where somebody is really, really beating you up. And I've heard
Right.
extreme cases of financial abuse, of emotional abuse,
Mhm.
and all of those take a toll on a person, on the victim. Like it beats you down.
Right.
And I have to say, talking to you right now, you are so full of life and so positive and so
Yeah.
bubbly, right? How did you get to that point? How did you get through everything that you were through and, you know, come to be the human that you are now?
Yeah, a lot of work. Honestly, I always tell people healing is a choice, and I made the choice to work on myself. We can choose to, right, get up and exercise and get the dream body we want, or sit on the couch and eat donuts all day. It's all a choice. If you're really unhappy with your life and you're really unhappy with how things are going, then you can make the choice to continue doing what you've been doing and going down that same path, or you can say, I'm going to do something different. And it might be a lot of work, but I think the end result will be worth it. So that's what I decided. I said, I'm going to work on myself. I want to be the best version of myself for my daughter because I have somebody here watching me. And also, I went through a lot of like familial abuse too, where like I was the scapegoat in my family. I was the loud one. I was always told, like you're too loud, be quiet. And, it's still like that. And, so I think a lot of the adversities in my life have made me really strong. But I also am very blessed to do the work that I love what I do. I love working with survivors and just seeing, a lot of them thrive and heal and do better. It's so incredibly rewarding to see that. But another like I said, I did a lot of work on myself too. And just the conscious effort of like wanting to do better and like learning about new things, teaching like myself about abuse and like learning about boundaries and how to implement them in my life. That was not an easy thing. And I'm still working through some of that. I'm much better than I was, but like also paying attention to the red flags in people. And another thing too, because of all the abuse I had went through in the past, I didn't trust myself and I didn't trust my decisions. And was codependent, and then I also had to like always get validated by other people. So like I didn't even trust my own intuition. Like I would be like, what do you think about this email? Was she being rude? Or what do you think about that? Do you think that was, like instead of me knowing that I thought that was my initial response was like that was rude, I have to ask other people, what do you think about this? And then get their validation. And I'm like, I should be able to trust my initial instinct. My initial response was that she was being a jerk. And why do I have to ask 10 other people if they think she was being a jerk too?
Well,
So like really just trusting yourself, after time will happen when you take the
yeah.
conscious effort. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that brings up a really good point because, the focus of this show is on making decisions. And the challenge that a lot of people have is if you don't trust yourself, you can't make that decision. And that's a big part of the reason why a lot of people keep stuck and going in a circle and going in a
Yep.
circle, because you ask this person for, one friend for, what's your opinion of this? And then the next person, and pretty soon you've got 10 different opinions.
Yeah.
Now you're more confused than when you start with,
Yeah. Very true. Yep.
you
Yeah.
know,
And
so
it's important, I think, to just, as time goes on, I know initially when you're getting out of like abuse and stuff like that, it could be really hard to trust yourself. That's what a lot of the women I work with say. Like, how can I possibly trust myself with like, if I could be so trustworthy, why would I have chosen this person? Why would I have gone through this? Why would I have allowed him to treat me like that? And I'm like, because you knew what you knew at the time. You got to give yourself grace for the things you didn't know. I'm like, but now you're working on yourself. Now you're healing, and give yourself credit for that. Because we also, too, I think as women don't give ourselves a lot of credit. And acknowledgement and give ourselves the grace or even celebrate ourselves when we do good things and hard things, and I always remind them like that was a win. I always remind the women that was a win. I was like, I hope you know that was a win. And then they always, oh, this is not that big of a win. I'm like, that's a huge win. Like, what are you talking about? And I always remind them. And then when I say it, they're like, I think you're right. Oh my God. Yeah. So like, I think that's important too. And then, like I said, as time goes on, like you start to trust yourself. And now I'm at this place where I like completely trust the decisions that I make and the way that I'm being guided, like, and just believing it in 100%. And like another thing too, we as women also have really good intuition. We get natural women's intuition and it's there for a reason. It's trying to guide us. And a lot of the times we don't listen to it. We always ask, oh, God, send me some signs. I want some signs. And we literally have signs all around us, but we don't listen or we don't really look around at the signs that are actually there. So like if you get a bad feeling about somebody, whether it's a guy or friend, somebody in your family, you get that gut feeling where you're like, ooh, this doesn't feel right, or get out of here. You gotta follow that. That is there for a reason. And not everybody, has that. I won't say everybody, but I think most women have that, and men don't really have that natural like intuition like we do. So I think it's a gift, and it should be utilized because it's like a free navigator inside of
yeah,
us.
100%. And I think it's also like a muscle. The more you
Mm-hmm.
rely on it, the more you listen, the
Yeah,
stronger it gets. And then the more you can trust it. And it
exactly.
becomes the upward cycle instead of the downward cycle.
Yeah, definitely.
So, speaking of work, the work that you do is absolutely amazing and so needed. How can people support you and support your organization and Rise if they wanted to do that?
Sure. So, of course, we're always taking donations if anyone wanted to donate to the cause. Otherwise, just telling people about our organization, sharing our stuff on social media with other people, sharing our events. We do a lot of events. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there that do struggle in silence. So just sharing something on social media can really impact another person's life without you really even expecting it to. I've heard of like people like that I don't even really talk to. I saw your video and I was crying and I'm like, oh, I didn't even know you looked at my stuff. So like that's why I put it out there because you never know who needs to see it. And like I said, there's a lot of people suffering in silence that maybe don't even know that there's help out there for them or that there's anybody else out there that gets it. And so when people come to our groups, they're like, wow, like I finally feel validated for the first time in my life. They're like, and that for some people is just like the first step to healing. Like I finally, somebody out there believes me. Sometimes you just need one person to be like, wow, like, sorry you went through that. I believe you. And it just can really change a person's life and the way they heal moving forward.
Yeah,
So yeah.
100%, 100%. And, speaking of events, I know you've got an event coming up in September. Can you tell people about that?
Sure. So we have our second casino night gala. So it'll be, casino games, craps, roulette, blackjack, poker, all that good stuff. And it's just, yeah, gala fundraiser. It's between And Rise and the Weaseless Foundation. So the Weaseless Foundation helps provide seed money for new women entrepreneurs just starting a new business. And obviously, And Rise, we work with survivors. So both organizations are all about empowering women. We also have one of our sponsors is Capital One Cafe. So everybody who attends our event will leave with a free swag bag. So Yeah, and we have spectator tickets. So if you're not really into like playing games and you just kind of want to be there to support, we have those tickets. And then we also have like tickets for if you want to gamble. But gambling, just I'll also say we're playing with money, with like fake money. So you're not actually losing money. It's not a real casino night, right? This is for charity. So if anyone's interested, yeah, we'd love to see you come by and support. It's a great cause. And we have a lot of awesome silent auction gifts like Botox, Bears tickets, Blackhawks tickets, different things like that, and a lot of raffle prizes as well.
I love that. Everything from Botox to the Bears. I mean, what's not to love about this? And
Yes.
for those who are listening, the URL where you can go to find the casino night event and sign up is at wesosfoundation.org. That's WESOS foundation.org/gala. And you can get tickets there. And we'll also link to it in the show notes so people can find it with a one click really easily. But where can people find you if they want to follow you, if they want to learn more, if they want to help out?
Sure. So yeah, if you want to learn more about And Rise, visit our website, www.womenrisechicago.org, or you can reach me directly at Jennifer@womenrisechicago.org. Also, if you want to visit our IG page, it's and yeah, the word and underscore rise underscore. And we have a really great IG page too, where just have a lot of like information about like abuse and healing and things like that. So definitely check it out.
Awesome. Jennifer, this has been such an eye-opening and important conversation. So I thank you very, very much for being here. And for those of you who are out there listening or watching, if you like what you hear, if you like what you see, I encourage you, give this a thumbs up, like, subscribe, share, and I look forward to seeing you and talking to you all again next time.